First test day of the Mazda 2 budget track car build. Bright and early in the morning, it's 4:45 AM. Got a 2.5 hour drive down to Collie Motorplex, which is south of Perth. And as always, it's the easiest alarm ever to wake up to on a track day. But yeah, nice morning drive. Nice cool morning, nobody on the roads. Let's get into it. First stop, beautiful views of the Perth city skyline. And I'm accompanied today by the High Performance Category podcast, greatest podcast in the world. Pretty intense normally at 5 o'clock in the morning to be listening to this much technical, but gets my mind working and doesn't put me to sleep too much. Really pleasant drive down, to be honest. I really enjoy driving to Collie. One, our city is beautiful, so never pass up a chance to drive past this in the dark. But two, it's just a pretty easy freeway cruise down for about 2 hours, and then we just jump up some rolling hills with beautiful scenery as the sun rises on the way into Collie. Well, we're about 2 hours into driving. It's normally sunrise, but as you can see, the weather's a bit dreary. I'd love to show you the natural beauty of this area. It reminds me of my home in New Zealand, but the fog ain't letting us do that. It was always forecast to be an overcast day with a few showers, so hopefully the rain stays away. Had a few showers on the way down, which is probably good because it cleans all the dust off the car. But yeah, just hoping it clears up and gets a little bit of temperature so we can dry out the track and get into it. But yeah, we're about 20 odd minutes away from the track. Hopefully things have cleared up a bit by the time we get out there. And here we are. Fog's already started to lift, which is a good sign, so hopefully track dries out relatively soon. So Collie Motorplex is easily my favourite track in the country so far. I've only been to about 3 or 4 of them, but anyway. Nestled in the forest, about 20 minutes outside of Collie. It's a cool little track, very technical, tight, twisty. The great section out the back. And yeah, you get to drive across the track to get in the pits, which is always cool. But the best thing is the vibe. So Anna and the crew here just run a really, really fun place to be. Yeah, really grassroots, really down to earth. Everyone's just here to have a great time, and they enable everybody to do that. So their tuning days are great fun, their race events are great fun. They always do an incredibly good job. That's a stark contrast to the other track we have in WA, which is much more sort of old school, bit stuffy. Still good fun, but yeah, the crew that run the other track are always doing their best to make life difficult for those trying to run events and have fun. So yeah, here's Collie. We'll get unloaded, get set up, and get into it. So we're all set up. We have Blake and the Jazz. That'll be quite a good competitor for us. We should be pretty much exactly the same speed. That's another very stock looking car. We have Scott in the EK. That's got a K24 in it. That's a very well set up car, which he's getting to grips with. That's the Honda crew here today. The rest of it's just a shitload of Excels. And there's an Evo, GR Yaris, the general sort of mix you get at track days. So Excels, if you're not from Australia, Hyundai Excel are a very popular race class here. They're quite cheap to get into, or used to be, and there's whole race series for them. So there's hundreds of race cars around the country. These days people are spending $50,000-$60,000 building them, but the crew here at Collie are normally more on the affordable side. There's some proper race cars out the back, but great fun and pretty varied in lap times. They'll probably do anywhere from 126s up to 133s, and we're hoping we're around a 130-ish. And the Mazda, comparing to the Honda is like 116, 117, so quite a big change, but still expecting this to be heaps of fun. So we'll head out for first session. We've been through the morning sessions. We've had, I think, 5 or 6 sessions in the car between me and Ben. Everything's going really well. Car's performing great. No issues or over temperatures or anything like that. And surprisingly quick for lap time. So I've done a 129.45, which is better than Target. Target was a 130, and a 129's for a basic car like this is a pretty quick time around here. It's about the same as what a lot of the Dixcel race cars are doing. Still some more in it, I think. We'll just keep pushing. But yeah, just playing with suspension settings like dampers and tyre pressures and that to change the balance. It is quite understeery, especially as the tyres get hot later in the session. We're just doing 10-minute sessions. So pretty stoked. Blake in the Jazz, he's cut a heap of time off his PB. He's now at a 129.44, so 1/100th of a second quicker than we are. And I've got my spare aim logger in his car for the next session so we can get some good data, and honestly they'll probably be exactly the same speed as each other. Scott in the EK, he's getting to grips with that car still, making good progress. He's got his PB down to a 126.6, I think he said, but still plenty more potential left in that car. That'll be in the low 20s once he's got it all sorted out and he's comfortable driving it. So it's used bugger all fuel, probably 15 litres for almost an hour of track time. So far, this is great. Had a few comments, people sort of enjoying the simple, cheap sort of build, but yeah, really happy. So we'll go and do some afternoon sessions and see if we can go any faster. And that's the end of the day. Didn't manage to go any faster, did a few more 29s, but not quite there. I think the sun came out for the afternoon, which always slows down the track. Morning is always where it's at. Super happy. We've probably got at least an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 40 of track time between the two of us across the day, which is shit loads. Car didn't miss a beat, didn't use much fuel, didn't use any oil. Our temperature stayed great, so super happy. I'll intersperse a couple of in-car videos throughout this, just of the fastest laps that I can find. My fastest lap didn't record because GoPro ran out of battery, as is always the case. The mount that I have in the car is pretty dodgy, so you'll see it moving around and vibrating all over the place. We'll try and sort something out a bit more solid once we go to a half cage. But yeah, super fun day. So Scott in the EK ended up chopping like 4 whole seconds off his PB, so he's down to a mid 123, which is pretty good. Blake also chopped a bit more time off, so he down to like a 129.2, and then me 129.4, and Ben's best time I think was a 130.7, but with his wife as passenger, so that would have easily been in the 129s if she wasn't there. Just for reference, I took Blake out for a passenger ride in the 2, and he straight away added like 2 seconds to my lap time, because these cars are so so lacking power. Adding 80-90 kg a person in the passenger seat makes a big difference. But yeah, awesome day. Massive thank you to Collie Motorplex crew as always. We'll love it. We'll be back in a couple of months for another go. Cheers. We'll see you later. Okay, let's have a look at some data. So first I'm going to have a look at myself in the Mazda 2. I'm the green traces versus Blake in the Honda Jazz. He's the grey traces. I have a bit more data than Blake available because in the Mazda 2 I'd plugged the AIM Solo 2 DL data logger into the ECU via the OBD port. So that gets me things like pedal position and brake pressure. When I had my spare logger in Blake's car, it wasn't plugged in, so it just gets the GPS and the speed and the accelerations. For a bit of context of what we're looking at, this is a pretty standard sort of what I'll call driver-based data plot, so it's not really looking at things like engines or temperatures or anything, it's just looking at what the car is physically doing. So at the top we have inline acceleration, which is your braking, essentially. You can see where it drops down these dips, that's where the braking events are. One of the key things is it looks like the 2's braking a bit harder than the Jazz in most places. Sort of what am I getting down to? I think I peaked at 0.8 G, pretty not great braking to be honest. The second one down here is lateral acceleration, so that's your cornering G, and you can see that's super similar between the two cars, which is quite cool. They're, again, sort of same weight, pretty similar cars. Next one down here is a speed trace, and once you get comfortable with this sort of data, you can kind of tell where on the track each of these parts are, but you can also cross-reference down here in the bottom left. It'll tell you, whenever I click, it shows you exactly on the Google Earth image of the track where we are. Next down here is throttle pedal position, so you can see most of the time it's at 100%. Next underneath it is brake pressure, and then down at the bottom is the most important one, which is the time compare. So at any particular point along the lap, so the x-axis is distance, so showing you how far around the track you are. It shows the exact time, slower or faster, that the other car was at that point of the track. Why that's handy is you can see that if you look at a particular area and there's a change in that time variance, you want to work out why. So here's a good example. You can see Blake's lap goes from 0.42 slower to 0.59 slower, and you can cross-reference that back to the speed. Is because the green trace, which is me, went a little bit longer before braking, therefore Blake was going slower compared to me because he braked earlier, and that's where that extra time variance came from. Blake's lap became more slower at that point in time, if that makes sense. So having a look at the two cars on their laps, for me, this is my best lap. It was a 129.4. This 130.1 for Blake is just the best lap that I had with the logger in his car. He did do a 129.2 later in the day, so no doubt all of these things I'm about to point out, his car would have sort of fixed up during those later laps. So first I'm looking at turn 1 here. Basically I just carry a little bit more speed through turn 1 and I'm on the gas a tad bit sooner, and that's worth about 1.7 tenths, so 0.167 of a second. Kind of, toing and froing through minimum corner speeds in the other corners. It's all super similar though, which is good to see. Like I spoke about before, this point here, which I believe is turn 6, it's the end of the bowling alley. I just braked a little bit later, and then as we go through the turn, I think it's 7, 8, 9 complex, something. Collie's got too many turns, I can never keep track. What I call a corkscrew section leading onto the back straight, which you'll sort of you'll know where that is if you've seen a video of a Collie lap. You can just see I carry a bit more speed across that left-hand kink before doing my final braking into the hairpin and then accelerating down the back straight. So that's worth a bit as well. You can see that I compromise my run down the back straight a little bit, and you can see that Blake slowly catches me up over that time, but then I still get a net gain out of it. So you're kind of trying to trade off different parts of the track. Rest of the laps all pretty similar. So yeah, again, surprising but not surprising. They're two very similar cars. They're basically doing exactly the same things on track as each other. So it makes for a great fun driving anyway. We're very competitive with each other. What I'll do now is just bring up Ben's lap. So Ben and I co-own the Mazda 2, and obviously are both racing in the Mazda 2. So you'd expect these laps to be almost exactly the same, and the only differences come from driver inputs, which is really valuable for educating the both of us and helping both of us improve. So I'll just go through a couple of the key differences between our fastest laps. Same again, I'm the 129.4 in the green. Ben is a 130.7 in yellow, but he did have his wife as a passenger, and we think passengers are worth somewhere between 1 and 2 seconds. I took Blake out for a ride as well and immediately went 2 seconds slower than what I was doing. So yeah, it's small amounts of weight are worth quite a lot in a very low powered car. I have no doubt that Ben, had he gone out and done some sessions by himself later in the day, we'd be pretty much bang on even in lap times. We're both the same sort of size and weight as well, which helps, so we're pretty even. So looking at some of these differences, looking at turn 1, you can see that Ben takes it a little bit later before braking and turning in. You can see that on the throttle trace and the braking trace as well, that I'm off the throttle and on the brakes earlier than Ben is. But I'm also back on the throttle earlier than Ben is too, so it kind of evens itself out. You can see the time variance down the bottom is basically 0 for that whole section of the track. So that's just 2 different approaches to the same corner, which end up with the same result. Where we do start to deviate is, I believe this is turn 5, heading onto the bowling alley down the back. Ben just had a little bit of a higher minimum speed through there, but in leading up to it, it looked like just sort of like a little wobble or something. He dropped a tiny bit of speed leading into it, so the overall net benefit is towards me. So at that point, Ben's about a 10th slower on that lap. We match each other pretty much perfectly right down the bowling alley and up towards what I'll call turn 6, the sweeping left-hander. This is where the differences really come in. So you can see me in the green here, I carry a lot higher minimum speed through that corner, and that means my speed is higher than Ben's the whole way through that complex. In terms of minimum speeds, I think I get down to about 84 minimum, and Ben's down to about 77 minimum, so that's quite significant. And you can see down here on the time variance plot that Ben's lap gets significantly slower over that time period. It goes from, let's call it 0.25 up to around 0.98, so about 3/4 of a second just through a couple of corners, just through carrying a bit more speed or whatever different approach that I took to make that work. The second half of that complex is what I call the corkscrewy bit. Again, you'll know what I mean when you see the video. I just carry more speed across that first left-hand kink, and then braking a bit later and on the gas a bit later as well. So we can see through here I've got a little spike of throttle as I feed it into the second half of the corner. I think that's actually me downshifting, so it'd be like heel towing. And you can see I brake significantly later and brake a less pressure overall than Ben into that corner. We're about exactly the same as we head down the back straight towards the last chicane. I tend to be off the throttle a bit earlier and then carry more speed kind of through in the chicane and do most of my braking towards the end of it. You can see our speeds are pretty much exactly the same, but Penna's doing a higher spikes of brake pressure, and he's on the throttle a bit longer than I am. Again, it all pretty much evens out. You can see the time variance down the bottom here doesn't really change. It just looks like I think I get on the gas ever so slightly earlier, and that just helps me a tiny bit heading up towards the last corner. Through the last corner, we're pretty much exactly the same as each other. Same thing, I'm off the throttle a tad bit earlier, on the brakes a tad bit earlier, but I'm also on the throttle a tad bit earlier, and that kind of evens out. That's just a quirk of my driving style, to be honest. I tend to be quite early on the brakes almost everywhere, but I brake less and carry more speed into corners. That's just my style. It's different to other people, and nothing's better. You know, it's not better or worse than others. It's just a different approach, and it's really cool to see two people in exactly the same car taking those differences in approaches and seeing what it actually means when we look at the data in real life. So great educational tool for the both of us. No doubt next time we go back to the track, not only will we make some changes to the car, because I guess both of our feedback was it's quite understeery, and that's to be expected for something that's got 225 tyres all round on a front wheel drive car. We want to get a lot more front bite into it, so we'll do some extra caster and a few other bits and pieces to help that. But we'll also take these driving insights and looking at both of our videos to sort of see what we're doing in each place and help each other go faster, which is the beauty of why we do this and why we take the engineering approach with all this data. Anyway, that's enough of the nerdiness. Back to closing out the video.